Hi there, welcome along to the evening show. On the programme this evening, we'll be joined by the founder of Grasshopper Landscape Services, Sinead Finn, who's back on the show to discuss some general problems you might be having with your garden and offer some valuable solutions as well. Also on the show, removing the bias against the women of Africa is the target of a new petition being launched by an Irish development agency, Self-Help Africa. And Sylvia Gavigan and George Jacob are here to discuss the new Change Her Life campaign. Lots to come here on the evening show. Well, it's that time of year, I suppose, when we all want to be out in the garden, but loads of problems can arise in the garden this time of the year, whether they're physical or aesthetic problems indeed. So we brought back the founder of Grasshopper Landscape Services, Sinead Finn, to talk us through our gardens this time of the year. Sinead, you're very welcome back indeed.
Hey Jimmy, thanks very much.
You were a great success the last time you were on. So by
you.
Public demand, you're back on the magic sofa. So this time of the year, what do we look for? What's the best way to get the best out of your garden?
Well, I suppose, Jimmy, from doing different gardens and designing them, we've come up with a few problems, I suppose, that come up on a regular basis.
Yeah.
So I thought maybe I could go through some of the more topical problems that happen and the solutions maybe that we came up with and how people worked around, you know, the issues that they find in their garden. So I have pictures to illustrate the problems that I talk about. So one of the situations that we came up against was a typical kind of back garden in a Dublin suburb, and they needed space to store their wheelie bins and a compost bin, and it had to be stored in the, you know, to the rear of the garden. But the problem was that the bottom of the garden also got the full blast of the evening sun. So when the client came home from a long day at work in the summer, she liked to go out, sit out, have a cup of tea in the sun, but she didn't want to be sitting beside her bins.
Who does, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the thing was, we had to find some way to screen the bins while she was sitting in our seating area. So what we came up with was a fencing material that was the same as her boundary fence, and we kind of created a little shelter around the bins. And you can get in by a little gate, which is made with the same fencing. And then what you can do is put wire up against the fencing and grow a climber against it, so it kind of softens the effect. Yeah, it worked quite well, and the path led down to the seating area and the gate to get the bins in and out.
You could put an odd shower in there when you take the bins out as well.
You could, you never know, you could integrate that too.
So photograph exhibition.
So this is another problem that frequently happens, where you have a level change in the garden. So sometimes it happens when you extend, you know, if you're putting an extension onto your house, so you're pushing out like a build structure and you have to dig foundations, you have to dig soil, and usually it's piled up at the back of the garden. So you end up with this higher level of soil than what's immediately around the house. So how do you deal with that? So what we did here was you have to put in steps in order to access the higher level. Just keep in mind that outdoors a step can only be 15 centimetres high, so just whatever your level change is, you divide it by 15, it'll give you the amount of steps.
Is that a safety thing?
Yeah, it's a health and safety. You don't want to have to step up too high.
Right.
So it can be lower than 15 but no higher. And once you have steps you can access the area, but you need a retaining wall as well just to hold the earth back, so you can use you know, different materials for that.
This one looks like I've been watering.
Yeah, no, this is actually a thing, what do I do when I don't have a garden? So, you know, people living in apartments, they might only have a terrace or a balcony, but they want to do a bit of gardening and they want to have a bit of greenery, I suppose. So if you have a balcony and you know you want to have pots, just be careful that you know the weight, the maximum weight that the balcony can take, because you don't want to overload it with pots. With this one, it was a terrace, so we didn't have to worry about the weight issue. And there's any really plant you can grow in a pot, so there's no limit to the amount of plants you can include. And those, we used just silver containers there. They were actually left over from a show garden that I did, Jimmy. They were originally they were sunken in the ground. They held water, so we just recycled them. So I was blogging about that actually area because it's something that people we'll have to deal with maybe.
And you left enough room for a little barbecue as well, which is
yeah,
a
and
very
the
good
seats
idea.
going out during the summer too.
So this is looking rather tasty, no?
Well, this is actually if you want to eliminate your lawn, so some people don't, they don't want the maintenance of a lawn, or else maybe the site is quite shady and they have more moss than lawn in the garden. So rather than just replace it with one type of material, it's actually preferable to use maybe a selection of materials. So here you'd have like the patio is with sandstone flags, and you have those diagonal lines of sandstone sets, which are small little units, and then gravel as well. And if you combine the colours, it kind of gives a complete look, but you're kind of differing the textures and the sizes of paving, so it just livens it up a little bit.
Were you blogging about that as well?
I will be blogging about that, Jimmy, actually.
Good for you. Okay, let's see, one more bloggable picture here. Very nice indeed.
So this is a front garden. Now, they didn't have any issue with having to park their car in the front garden or anything like that.
Oops,
but it's how to integrate the old elements in the garden with the new design. So we had to deal with, old granite steps going up to the hall door, and they had nice mature climbers on the house front. So we couldn't be ashamed to get rid of those. So what we did was we took the lead from the granite was already there with the steps. So we used granite flagstones for the path, granite sets again, and granite curbing. And then with the climbers on the house front, we put a line of box balls, those little balls in front of it. And then they linked in with the new planting of box balls on the edge of the path and in the centre. And again, they had issues with storing their bins in the front garden. So we did that little bit of paving there so that they can get the bins in and out.
And do you have a kind of a database, for every problem I have a solution?
Not really, because every garden really will present its own problem. And really it's the job of the designer to try and think of how to overcome it, in a practical way, but yet that it looks good and it links in with all the other elements of the design. And sometimes, I suppose, you do meet the same problems, but as often you actually come up against a new issue that you have to think about and say.
I mean, obviously everybody's conscious of the money and their expenditure these days, but I mean, when you're looking at those pictures, it is money well spent, particularly this time of the year when you're hoping to get outdoors for some of the time anyway.
Yeah, and I suppose as well, some people might think, if I use a certain surface or if I use gravel, it'll be over my budget. But actually they are, they're not completely out of reach, you know what I mean? And if you kind of think, just shop around, I suppose, and see what the different options are. And it is, even if it's a little bit more than you originally planned to spend, it is money well spent, because it adds to the value of the property.
And I've never heard anybody say they regret spending money on their little room outdoors.
Yeah, I think they realise that, when it's done, they suddenly start to spend so much more time in it. And realise that actually they were missing out all those times, when they didn't complete the work. So it is worth doing.
You've amazed me again, Sinead, with all your creative ideas.
Thanks,
Thank you very much indeed for coming in.
Thanks for having me, Jimmy.
And we'll have Sinead back again, I'm sure, with some more great creative ideas for you, for your room outside. Time for us to take a quick break, but don't go away, because in a few moments I'll be speaking to Sylvia Gavigan and George Jacob from Self Help Africa. Looking forward to that. Join us after the break.